Good day and welcome to SCO BRICS Insight. We talk about what's really going on in the world of the BRICS. Now, today I want to talk about the report that Russia has overtaken Brazil and Turkey to become the third-ranked country among the G20 with the highest annual economic growth rates. Now, the top five include four countries that are official members of BRICS and one that is an associate member. In contrast, the Western bloc of countries have experienced a major decline in their economic performance, with Germany being positioned as an outlier for the second consecutive year. The impact of sanctions and trade wars has been challenging to conceal. In terms of economic growth, Russia was ranked third among the G20 countries, surpassing Brazil and China. India took first place. Its economy grew by a significant 6.7% last year. China and Indonesia jointly ranked second, with their GDPs growing by 5%. Russia took third place with 4.8%. So the top five countries with the highest GDP also included Brazil at 3.4% and Turkey at 3.2%. Now, as I said, it's noteworthy that all five countries are part of the BRICS. Four are actual members and Turkey the associate member. Now, in contrast, Western countries demonstrated modest, minimal or negligible growth rates for their economies. Italy at 0.7%, France at 1.1% and Canada at 1.5% maintained their growth rates at the same low level. Japan in particular experienced a notable slowdown in GDP growth rate, reaching a low of 0.1%. How do you notice that? Australia experienced a twofold decrease in growth rates to 1%. Economic slowdowns were evident in the UK from 1.4% to 0.9%, the US from 2.9% to 2.7%. Now, Germany's experienced an economic downturn for the second consecutive year, following a 0.3% decrease in GDP in 2023. It further declined by another 0.2%. I mean, Argentina is the second G20 economy to end the year down in the red due to a difficult period of reform under Javier Milei. So much for his chainsaw in favouring the US or China and decided not to join the BRICS. Now, before I continue, I'd like to make an appeal. If you like and enjoy my videos, you can help me fund the channel and my website, scobricsinsight.com, to further develop it. You can do this by making a small donation, which you can do by clicking on the thanks button at the bottom of the video screen. Everybody who donates does get a personal thank you from me. And I'm thanking you all now for watching because I do appreciate all of you. Keep the comments coming, love to read them, love to respond to them. Now, in contrast, Russia's GDP growth rate of 4.8% is 4 times higher than the average growth rate of the G7s. G7 grew by an average of 1% in 2024 compared to 1.1% a year earlier. In fact, in the last 2 years, Russia's economy has demonstrated robust growth, but expanded by 8.4% and significantly outperforming other regions worldwide, according to Deputy Prime Minister Alexander Novak. And conversely, the Eurozone recorded a mere 0.8% growth. In nominal terms, Russia's GDP has doubled since 2020, rising from 107 billion rubles to 200 trillion rubles. Target is an ambitious one for 2030 of 300 trillion rubles. Novak also noted the higher growth rates of developing countries can be attributed to a number of factors. This is both the low base effect and the demographic potential. The younger age structure of developing world's population, the median gap between the developed and the undeveloping, translates as 15 years of the labour force and higher economic activity. This phenomenon can also be attributed to catch-up development, whereby developing countries adopt and implement existing technologies and innovations without having to expend resources on their initial creation. Finally, there's the peculiarities of statistical accounting. Vladimir Lubetsky, who's a professor at the Department of National Economy at the Russian Presidential Academy, says, from the very beginning, many economists said that Western sanctions against developing economies would have negative consequences for the actual developed countries themselves, which is exactly what happened, or what we call in Russia the boomerang sanctions. I mean, for instance, most European countries possess advanced technologies, but they lack the affordable natural resources, resulting in a significant decline in the competitiveness of their finished products. This in turn had a negative impact on the region's economic indicators. Conversely, for the Russian economy, sanctions catalysed further structural changes, fostering the development of import substitution policies and establishing new trade ties in Asia and Africa, according to Katerina Novikova, who's a professor of economic theory at the Russian Economic University. I mean, the higher growth rates of developing countries are attributed to a number of factors. I mean, apart from the statistical accounting measures that can be done and played around with, there's various other ways that comes into play. I mean, trade wars and the imposition of sanctions have unintended consequences. I mean, as Natalia Mikhailova, who's an analyst at Freedom Finance Global, explains, Germany was used to benefiting greatly from the inexpensive Russian natural resources like pipeline gas, just as in the 19th and early 20th centuries, the European G7 countries were accustomed to developing their economies using the inexpensive raw materials that they looted from their colonies until these colonial regimes collapsed and empires basically disappeared post-war. However, as soon as the German economy was deprived of its cheap resources and it severed its close economic ties, a day of reckoning followed. If a developed country is defined as one with a developed and world-leading industries, then Germany is no longer considered a developed country, as its world-leading industries are disintegrating. I mean, since 2022, we've been able to observe how the economy of a major European nation with a developed industrial sector can undergo a complete decline into stagnation and accelerated deindustrialization. Russia, paradoxically, though, has benefited from the sanctions. Mikhailova states that more than 20,000 sanctions of various types have been imposed, but this only contributed to the elimination of the rather controversial model that Russia had of we sell oil and gas to the West and they send us cars and consumer goods. So the Russian economy has also helped it strengthen its relations with the BRICS, the Eurasian Economic Union, and other developing countries. The trade wars between the US, the EU and China has also ultimately been unsuccessful. I mean, the US sought to reduce Chinese exports to the country, but only fell temporarily during the introduction of US tariffs, and they're now back to where they were. I mean, since the initial trade war in 2018, China's also increased its exports into other markets, the new markets of nearby Asian countries, into Africa and Latin America. Currently, the EU and the US have launched a new offensive against China in the vehicle and high-tech sectors. However, China's not complacent in its challenging in the artificial intelligence race. It's noteworthy that deep-seek neural network from China caused a significant disruption to the US stock market, prompting investors to divest shares in major American tech companies like Nvidia. In Mikhailova's opinion, that developing countries such as China, India, Russia and Indonesia will continue to show growth rates that are higher than average in the global economy. Now, to maintain growth rates, Russia has to stimulate investment growth. Now, this can be done through low interest rates on loans, budget investments, and the formation of alternative channels to the credit markets for attracting finances for fledgling businesses. Now, these measures should include the further development of the stock market and the creation of a favourable legal environment for both domestic and international investors. Concurrently, the Russian economy has also begun to slow down this year. I mean, it had a pretty successful last year, and they're not expecting such growth rates as 2024 in 2025. In particular, the central bank expects growth of only around 2 to 3%. However, that's not too much of a problem because the country actually needs to combat inflation more than anything else. The high central bank rate, which has effectively stopped the process of lending to the population and businesses, is having an effect. I mean, it's caused a slowdown in economic growth, but that's not an alarm signal. I mean, the rapid growth rate that led to inflation, instability in the financial markets, and caused an imbalance in the labour market. So the consequences might have been a budget deficit, problems with the trade balance, and a decrease in the quality of investment projects. However, these developments may have social ramifications. I mean, acceleration of inflationary processes, as we saw in the 90s, are seriously concerning, and we don't want to back there. Ongoing instability of the global economy, trade wars could lead to a decline in energy prices, and that would negatively impact the Russian economy. but not too seriously because of import substitution and the development of other things for the tax bodies. So BRICS and Russia continue to grow while the West and the G7 stagnate. Thanks for watching. Please like, share and subscribe. Do hit the alert button so you know when I post a new video. And if you want to help me out, click on the thanks button at the bottom of the screen and make a donation. See you all again soon. Thank you.